Good morning and welcome back to Books and Gratitude. Today we're going to talk about the psychological thriller Adam by J R Maren. I thoroughly enjoyed this book, and this is really the kind of psychological thriller that hooks you with its premise almost immediately because it takes a terrifying idea and makes it feel chillingly believable. Adam Cole isn't careless, he isn't impulsive, and he isn't sloppy. He has spent years studying the serial killers who came before him, learning from their mistakes and building a system designed to make himself untouchable. That alone makes this story feel incredibly unsettling because the tension doesn't come from wondering whether he's dangerous. We already know he is. The tension comes from watching someone who believes he has perfected the process and wondering how long perfection can really hold. That's what made this book so compelling for me. Adam's professional as a management consultant is such a smart choice. He moves from city to city, works short client engagements, has no obvious pattern, and always has a professional reason for being exactly where he is. That setup feels so calculated and so plausible that it adds this extra layer of unease to the whole story. There's something especially creepy about a villain who doesn't need to hide in the shadows because his entire life is the perfect cover. I also really like the psychological angle of this book. It feels less like a thriller built on chaos and more like one built on control. Adam has turned himself into a system. He has studied failure, corrected weaknesses, and convinced himself he's smarter than the men who came before him. And that kind of confidence creates such a strong sense of tension because as a reader, you know the smallest crack in that control could bring everything down. It makes the story feel sharp, intelligent, and quietly menacing. And then you have D.S. Helen Marsh, who sounds like exactly the right kind of detective for a story like this. I love that she's described as the kind of detective who reads a file 4 times. That detail says so much. She's thorough, careful, and persistent, and those qualities feel especially dangerous when set against someone who has built his entire identity around being flawless. That contrast between Adam's precision and Helen's determination is such a strong foundation for suspense. And what really worked for me here is that the story seems to understand that fear doesn't always come from noise or gore or shock. Sometimes it comes from calmness, from order, from the terrifying idea that someone can look completely normal on the outside while hiding something monstrous underneath. And that kind of psychological tension is always so effective when it's done well. And it sounds like Adam really leans into that. Now, the reason I'm giving this 4.5 stars instead of 5 comes down to one personal preference, and that is the present tense writing. I'm just not a fan of present tense novels. It's the same reason I gave People We Meet on Vacation 4.5 stars. That choice in style doesn't mean the book wasn't strong, because it absolutely was. That choice is simply one of those things that creates a little distance for me as a reader. Even with that, I still thoroughly enjoyed Adam, which says a lot about how compelling the story premise and tension really are. Overall, this was a dark, smart, and unsettling psychological thriller, and it kept me engaged with the premise and held my attention with its atmosphere. So if you like thrillers that get under your skin by exploring the mind of someone who believes he has outsmarted everybody, this one is definitely worth reading. It's worth reading regardless. And now for my words of gratitude. I am grateful for books that can take a familiar kind of thriller setup and make it feel fresh, sharp, and genuinely disturbing. I'm grateful for stories that remind me how powerful psychological suspense can be when it's built on character, control, and the slow unraveling of certainty. And I'm always grateful for a book that helps me turn pages even when it's taking me into very dark places. Thank you so much for joining me on this Books and Gratitude episode. If you liked the episode and you enjoyed the premise of this book, please like and subscribe and share it with anybody you think might enjoy it as well. Thank you and enjoy your weekend.